for your time this evening. I'm Manone Butler, the Executive Director of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and I am pleased to see so many of my colleagues and friends here tonight to join CJCC in our fall public meeting. Each year we have a fall and spring public meeting, and this year our fall public meeting is focused on violence prevention, creating the new normal. I've had conversations with many of you in the room. It's not lost on us that she's pouring on us right now. That's right. It's not lost on us that there's a lot of conversation. There's a lot that's going on in the community, in our city. That's really going pretty well. And let me start with that. We are doing a lot that really is impacting our community. But we also have challenges in our city. I really hope from this evening's conversation, as a collective, as a community, we focus on what our role is in creating what is the new normal for us in the District of Columbia. Many of us are here representing different governmental agencies. We certainly have community stakeholders here. We have our faith-based leadership here. But at the end of the day, and I was just sharing with a colleague, I'm a native Washingtonian, so when I get up in the morning, I get up as a resident and a citizen of the District of Columbia, first and foremost. And so I'm hoping, and I invite us to participate in this gathering this evening to talk about, really pretty candidly, what our expectations are, what our hopes are, what our fears and challenges are, but also what we're committed to contribute to this city. And again, it is all of us have an incredibly important role to play. No one agency, no one system has a lock on addressing or preventing violence in the District of Columbia. Collectively, we do. And so I would like, and I invite us to come to the conversation, one of many conversations that we've had, come to the conversation this evening with an eye towards and heart open to really be thoughtful about what role we do play, what roles we can play with those who are seated next to us and with those who are in the communities within which we reside, to really shift what has been normalized, and I think inappropriately normalized in our communities. I challenge us to be a part of shifting the culture of violence and not contributing to it, and also being honest and open about the challenges we face, but also put on our problem-solving hat, because many of us can identify issues. I think probably all of us could identify the issues. What I want us, and I encourage us, and I invite us to do tonight, is to identify solutions that we will play a part in making sure happen here in the District of Columbia and more granularly within our communities. Thank you for your participation in advance this evening. We're going to have a bit of a program shift. Our co-chair, the Director of Pretrial Services, Leslie Cooper, will be joining us a little bit later. Before I introduce the great host of this facility, I want to just note a couple of things. Restrooms, they're behind me. The women's restroom is to my right. The men's restroom is to my left. There are a few videos over there, so you're coming, we're going to fuel you up so that you're able to participate in this conversation with the vigor that I know many of us have at the end of a long day. I'm sure of that. That's why I was asked to bring some fiddles together, and so we have some fiddles to ensure that happens. Without further ado, I am privileged and really humbled to invite to the podium Reverend Reginald Green, the interim pastor of Israel Baptist Church, who is the host of this facility and the shepherd of the facility in the house next door. And I want to thank him publicly for just the graciousness with which Israel Baptist Church has treated and treated us here at CJCC.
Good evening. Let me say it one more time. Good evening. Good evening. Let me begin, since she took the liberty to mention where she came from. Let me ditto and say that I'm also a native Washingtonian, having grown up in Southwest Washington. But today I'm brought here as one who's been called and have accepted the challenge of this wonderful congregation which has wonderful historic groups and community activity and involvement through the years under the leadership of its late pastors. I'm here as an interim then to take on the role of welcoming you, this wonderful group that makes up our Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and all those who are interested in supporting the work that you do as we try to meet the challenges facing us in this day and age, not only in this city, but in the nation as a whole, even from where it starts at the top in terms of administration. We are grateful that you have been wanting to be here today. We want to welcome you and help you feel warm and welcome to this place. We pray that God might continue to bless you in your effort, and that He might use this church, Israel Baptist Church, as a conduit, as an instrument that helps to bring some wholeness out of the brokenness that seems to be part of our life here in our communities today. And so to you, I commend you. It is my first time to have an opportunity to be with you in this arena at this time. And I want you to know that I just shared this with some of those. I remember the days I sat with one of our officers from the police department, and I think she may be still here. And we shared some stories with each other. And I mentioned to her, in 1961, we couldn't find a black cop in Mississippi, where I was as one of the freedom riders in Mississippi some years ago. It was that day that it made me fully understand the need for us to work with bringing some liberation, some wholeness out of the brokenness of our communities. And you have chosen wisely to come to this place tonight. And we want you to make yourself at home. We do have some members of Israel here today. I just want them to stand. Brother Bird, stand up. I want to I think Sam is still here. I just want you to see some of the faithful members of Israel who wanted to be here. They didn't want me to be here by myself. So God bless you. Make yourself at home. I hope to take part as much as I can in what you do today. And we want you to know Israel is behind and supportive of the work you do every day to try to help our communities become communities again with a neighborly context of knowing that it takes a village to raise all of our children. God bless you.
So before we continue with the program, I did want to acknowledge a couple of our CJCC members. So CJCC is an independent agency. We work with all of the district's local and federal justice leaders in the District of Columbia. And we have a couple of our members and their representatives here today. We have the Director of the Department of Corrections, Director Quincy Ruth, would you please be acknowledged? We have the Director of the Public Defender Service, Director Avis Buchanan, would you be acknowledged, please? All right. We also have representations from our Metropolitan Police Department on behalf of Chief Newsham. We also have representation from the Bureau of Prisons, Mr. Confair. The Director from our Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency, Cedric Hendricks. And I'm doing this purposefully because these members create and actually make up the complement of CJCC. And lastly, I think I saw Kevin Whitfield, who is on staff with Councilmember Charles Allen. All right. Without further ado, Khalil Munir, who has been instrumental in pulling this together. Many of you got calls from him, who will be directing us through the rest of the program. Mr. Munir.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here to engage in this community-oriented discussion and problem solving. So essentially, what we try to do in every meeting is establish a baseline of where our attendees are by utilizing what we call Options Finder, Options Power, and each of you have a clicker at the table at your disposal. So that clicker is used to respond to a series of questions that will be posed to you. And you will have approximately 15, 20, 30 seconds to respond. And at the end of that time, I'll look to see if everybody's completed. And then you will have input your answers by pressing on the button code, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the appropriate response is. And then there will be a corresponding tally. So we have approximately 6 or 8 questions that we'll go through, basic demographic information, and then some pointed questions to try to identify where you are in your experience and your perceptions about violence and violence prevention. So with that said, does everyone have a clicker at their disposal to use for this exercise? Is anyone sure? If not, we will commence. First question, where do you live? Just press the corresponding button. 1, 2, 3, so forth and so on. And at the end, we'll tally. I'll give you a little bit of time, but you know where you live, so I don't think you need too much help. Has everyone answered? No outliers? Let's see what we have. The goal is to ensure that we have wonderful representation from across the district. And for a change, we have some really solid representation across the district. Next question. How concerned are you about violence in the district? Are you somewhat concerned, very concerned, not concerned, or unsure? Responses indicate accordingly. Number 1, very concerned. Overwhelming number. 2, somewhat concerned, 11%. 3, not concerned, 5%. 4, unsure, 3%. So clearly there is concern across the board regarding violence in the district. All right, here we go. Whose responsibility is it to change attitudes and norms around violence? Is it our government leaders? Is it law enforcement, community organizations, individuals, public health officials, or all of the above? Right, done? 87% said all of the above. Interestingly, 3% said community organizations that play a vital role. 10% said individuals. In your community, what trends are occurring relative to violence? Is it increasing, decreasing, no change, do not know? Of you said increasing, 18% said decreasing, 32% said no change, 18% said do not know. Which approach do you favor for reducing or preventing violence? stronger laws, greater enforcement, alternative sentences, personal behavior modification, greater community collaboration, increased prevention, and early intervention. Looking forward to these responses. "69% said increased prevention and early intervention," which is the primary reason why we're here. Greater community collaboration, 16% responded to that. Lesser numbers, personal behavior modification, 6%. Alternative sentences, 3. Greater enforcement. Interesting. And 6% said stronger laws. Here's something that essentially touches close to the heart. Have you or anyone close to you been victimized by violence? Yes, no, I don't know. 21% said no. Look at the overwhelming rest of the response, 89%. Very telling. Thank you so much for participating. And now, what we plan to do is go to a personal testimonial. We have here this evening a wonderful, strong, and dynamic citizen of the district. Her name is Ryan Nickens. She's with the Trayron Center. Ryan has a poignant and compelling story to tell. I'm not going to even attempt to give credit to what she has to say. So without further ado, I will bring DC's homegrown, Ms. Ryan Nickens. Thank you.
I'm going to set my timer so I can honor the 10 minutes I've been given. Thank you all for inviting me to share my story. I am a DC native. I was born and raised in Ward 8. I am so a DC native and a Southeast girl that I was born at Greater Southeast Community Hospital. And it was in Southeast that my life was impacted on both sides, good and bad. And tonight I'll tell you about the bad. When I was 12 years old, I'm not much of a sleeper, so I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning most times. And that 12-year-old was up at 2 o'clock in the morning when our phone rang. And it was my uncle, and he told me to put my mom on the phone. And I wanted to joke and play, but he was serious, and he said, "Put your mom on the phone, it's not a joke." And I heard my mother scream, a scream I'd never heard her scream before. And that scream came because their baby brother was found on 22nd Street in Southeast dead. 2 bullets entered my uncle's body that were not intended for him. He just looked like somebody who the person intended to shoot. And our family's life changed from that moment on. And before we could begin to heal from my uncle's death, my uncle's murder, 2.5 years later, an argument between my pregnant sister and our next door neighbor who had been released from jail a year prior escalated. It escalated into him shooting my sister and killing her, shooting my mother, my brother, and another sister. And a 15-year-old was awakened and told all this had transpired in our house in Washington Highland Dwellings on December the 3rd, 1993. And I woke up and I was told to be an adult. I was told to call my grandmother, call my father, call my family and tell them hell had literally broken loose in our home. And at that point, I just wanted to be comforted. I just wanted somebody to tell and reassure that 15-year-old that this wasn't the end, that there was something better. There was, and basically that this wasn't even true. But when I walked down the steps, I saw my sister laying in our doorway. And that became reality. And so after that, I heard the paramedics say we have a Black woman in her late 30s to early 40s with a gunshot wound to the head. And for me, that moment became my mother's dead. Not knowing what happened to my brother, but knowing that my sister Tracy was dead for sure. I walked out the house and was told that my mother and the gunman, my mother actually threw her body on the gunman to stop him from shooting her children. And they wrestled for the gun and she ended up killing him in the midst of all of this. But 22 days after my family was attacked was the first time I tried to commit suicide. So the myth that Black people don't commit suicide is a lie. It was on Christmas morning. I was waiting for my dad to come pick us up because we spent mornings and early afternoons with my mom and we spent evenings with my dad for holidays. But I, that 15-year-old, figured life wasn't worth living anymore. And I took a whole bottle of NyQuil, 2 bottles of pills that were prescribed to my mom, and went and prepared myself for my death because life was not worth living to me at that point. I didn't see a way forward for me. And I was an ambitious child. I'm telling y'all how ambitious, because I thought I was going to change my husband's last name. That's how ambitious I was. And that girl that had all those plans just turned inward. And then there were the friends, there were the neighbors, the classmates who had succumbed to gun violence in our community. But our family still couldn't rest because 2.5 years after our family was attacked, my brother was found murdered in Washington Highland. We had moved out of the community because we had the finances to do so. But my brother went back. He was lured out of the house by what was supposed to be his friend and shot and killed and left in Washington Highlands alleyway. And a little boy on his way to school that next morning found my brother's body. And I often wonder what happened to that little boy. Did that little boy suffer the same fate as my brother? How did that traumatize that baby to see a dead body? Was it normal for him at that point? Because for a 17-year-old who got the news that he was dead after I had come home from school, it wasn't normal. It just wasn't normal to see people be taken away by such cowardly acts. It wasn't normal for me. And so I devised a plan to get the heck out of DC and not to come back. I would only come back to celebrate family functions. I would only come back to visit every now and then and again, but I was getting out of this city. This city held too much pain for me. This city was just death for me. And so I went to North Carolina Central University and I was going to be the Oprah Winfrey of sports reporting. I was going to make it big, and I'll come home to cover the Redskins games, the Wizards games, say hey, but Southeast would never see the soles of my feet again. But God had other plans for me, and I began to sense a call to ministry, and I began to do work in the community when I was a member of Brighter Day United Methodist Church in Ward 8. And I would see my friends. I would see the people I grew up with, and now my friends were losing their sons to gun violence. They didn't know what to do, so they began to self-medicate their pain. And it was like, what do you do? What do you do when a mother has nowhere else to turn? A father has nowhere else to turn? And I remember my own parents' face and their anguish and their pain after my siblings were killed, after her brother, my mom's brother was killed, and it became, what do we do? And so I thought, well, nothing, because, I just want my house in Georgetown, and I would be cool. But God kept tugging on my heart. God kept saying, when you're healed, it is your place to go back and help somebody else along the healing path. And so, while a student, my last year at Howard University School of Divinity, when I was finishing my master's degree, I began to think of ways I could help, and I thought, I'll do policy, because policy doesn't have people attached to it. It doesn't have faces. You don't have to hear stories. You can just work and change things via policy, but things on a piece of paper mean absolutely nothing, because DC has some of the strictest gun laws, but yet guns still find their way on our streets. We have not one gun store in our city, but guns still find their way on our street and into the hands of our neighbors. And then the bullets find their way into the body of our family members. And so it became, what can you do? And it was like, okay, you're healed. Can you help somebody else along the healing path? And so I, a year after graduating, started the Trayvon Center. It is an organization that's meant and intended to help families, communities, and individuals deal with their grief through non-traditional counseling services, and to help in art therapy. Because Black people don't do therapy. We got Jesus and He all we need, but I can attest that you can have Jesus and a good therapist and He will not mind at all. You can have both, and your faith will still be intact, because I sit on that couch every week. And so we started with the intent of preventative services for our children who are living in impacted communities that have been impacted for decades. And we are in Langston Lane, in the Langston Lane community. And over the summer, we did artful afternoons there. And one of my 7-year-olds bought a bullet that he found on the property, and he thought it was okay for show and tell, because it's his norm. It's his norm. It wasn't a big deal to none of our kids. And when we began to have the conversation about what exactly does that bullet do, then our kids begin to share their grief, their anxiety. You haven't heard anything until you heard a 5-year-old question whether or not they're going to live to see 8. When Michaela Wilson was killed, we had the conversation with our kids, and they are sitting there wondering if they will even make it. Like, people don't care. And you're trying to give them a new norm, a new sense of life, and to say, look, I grew up in Southeast, I've achieved these things, and so can you. But it's like, Miss Ryan, this and this and this is going on at home. Ms. Ryan, they don't care about us. They shoot when we outside playing. And I realized that 4 hours in a community center with them was good. But we need to begin to heal those who are pulling the triggers, those who are hurting. So we expanded to our peer services, where we do individual peer sessions with people who've been impacted, to help them understand what happened to you that you stopped caring. And how do we get you healthy, that you will care? Because healthy people don't kill people. You just don't do it. And so that is the work we do. That's the work I have committed my life to. I'm a Southeast girl, and we know that most homicides and violent crimes happen east of the river. But I'm also one who has achieved, and I'm not the only girl from Southeast or the person from Southeast that has been able to make it. And that is the norm. That is the other norm that does not get power. There's only one norm that gets highlighted, and that's the violence. But there are norms, because I have classmates who have gone on to do great things. There are people who've gone on from east of the river to do great things. And if we can put those people in front of our kids, then we can tell them that this is the norm in our city. This is the norm for east of the river. That you can go on to trade school, you can go on to college, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, or you can be a master plumber. You can be whatever you choose to be. But you just need to work and then have a mentor alongside them. I had Philomena Rolock as a mentor growing up, and she made the difference in my life. Where my parents didn't graduate from college, she helped me navigate the college application process. And that's what makes the difference. It's people who care, and we can change the norms in our communities and in this city. Because someone told me after my cousin was shot during Memorial Weekend this year, because our family had done everything right. We had moved onward to the middle class and moved to the better neighborhoods and all these things. And they said, well, Ryan, your cousin was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I said, no, I don't think so. He was hanging out after working 40 hours that week with friends. If he was in Ward 3, would you have said he was at the wrong place at the wrong time? But because he was in Ward 8, it was the wrong place at the wrong time. There is no place in our city that should be the wrong place at the wrong time for anybody. And so, I'm going to close because I can go on and on, you all. I'm a talker. Once I get started about this, I will go on and on, because I think that we have the people in the room, we have the people in this city, from government to individuals, to change the narrative in our community. We just need to stand up and stand together and not be divided on any of these issues, that there is a problem and we have the necessary resources to do something great and to change the narrative and the norms. I was telling Marcus that I asked if he heard that over the weekend New York celebrated not having one shooting. And he said, but that's crazy. But if we can get to one weekend without a shooting in DC, I think we can get to 1 week, and we can get to 1 month, and we can get to 1 year. But we've got to do it together. Thank you all.
Ryan, thank you very much. As expected, your words were powerful and relevant. And so, what we're going to do next, this was the precursor to us going into breakout groups. And here's what we intend to do. At your respective tables, you will be tasked with answering some very specific questions. And the goal of those questions include you identifying strategies, recommendations, and solutions to the problems of violence reduction and prevention, and trying to establish a new normal of thinking and response. And so there will be an individual at your table who will be serving as the facilitator for the discussion. But it is incumbent upon all of you to use your brain power, your powers of persuasion, your voices to offer up some tangible solutions and recommendations. Now this will run for approximately 55 minutes. During those 55 minutes, during those 55 minutes, we will expect for you to use a flip chart and to write down the ideas and recommendations that you intend to propose. At the end of the 55 minutes, there will be a report out from each one of the groups at the assigned tables. So the facilitator will designate someone to report out, or the facilitator, him or herself, will report out the recommendations and findings. Thereafter, the summary of findings and report out, we will then move to the roundtable discussions. So your recommendations and suggestions will serve as the foundation for the questioning that will be put forward by Dr. Roger Mitchell Jr., the Chief Medical Examiner for the District of Columbia. And so, without further ado, what we're going to do, and I'm going to ask staff to walk over to that far wall and get some of the flip pads in order for you to be able to write your responses. And so, the individuals who are the facilitators at the table, you know who you are. If there's a table where no one knows who their facilitator is, let me know, and we'll decide who the leader is at that table. Any questions? Oh, also, if you're at a table with only 1 or 2 persons, then you're free to gravitate to another table where there are more individuals. Please do not be shy or be an outlier and just sit at a table by yourself. Thank you.